This is Club Meeting 45. And as you guys can see, we have a special guest on the podcast with us this week. Hi, Greg, and thanks for being on.
Pleasure to be here. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
But a 5-star combo, 5-star guest.
Yes. Yeah, that's a really great point. I think you summarized it really amazingly. And I'm so happy that you are here to talk with us because I think we would be bumbling around this a little bit.
Let's go beyond the first page. Let's go beyond the first page.
Welcome back, Second Pagers. This is Beyond the First Page podcast with siblings Phoebe, Phil, and Isaac. I'm Phoebe.
I'm Phil.
I'm Isaac.
And this is Club Meeting 45. And as you guys can see, we have a special guest on the podcast with us this week. This is our friend Greg, Phil's friend from Princeton. And the reason that we had him on was because he studied Russian literature, and we're hoping that he can offer a unique insight and perspective on the book that we read, which is Patriot by Alexei Navalny. Hi, Greg, and thanks for being on.
Pleasure to be here. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
We always like to open up with a question to get us talking, and it's kind of in line with your career and everything you've done. I wanted to know the coolest place you've traveled for work, being in the Army. And as you know, Isaac and I are also in the service. So we've been able to travel a bit. And I'm sure Phil also through his job has traveled. So wanted to hear coolest place you've ever traveled. And if you want to talk just briefly about what you were doing there, that would be cool too. If not, just the place would be great.
Yeah, for work, again, apropos, the Suwałki Gap of Poland was pretty cool. A very sort of distant region of Europe. A lot of fun. Met some cool people.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's very cool. Yeah, I've never been to Poland or even close to Russia. So thank you for sharing that. Phil, what about you?
Mine would definitely be Martha's Vineyard. I went on a work trip last year, and my boss just has some really, really, really nice amenities there. So that was a great work trip.
Yes, that was crazy to hear about you when you shared that with us. Isaac, what about you?
I think the coolest place I've been for work is Suda Bay, Greece. It's like a area on the island of Crete. I flew there in our airplane, so it's just a very beautiful approach into the island, and right on the water. Probably the most beautiful place I've ever been.
Yeah, cool.
And I was only there for 30 hours, but it was great.
You know, I love this podcast because I learn something new about Isaac almost every time we talk. I did not know that you had done that, Isaac. That's really cool. Mine is Perth, Australia. It's the western side of Australia. I think it's just cool, not necessarily in the fact that anything that we were doing was that cool or the landscape. It is a cool landscape. It's coastal, but just it would be very hard to get to that location otherwise if we had not been there for work. So, yeah, I would say Perth. Very interesting remote Air Force establishment out there. Yeah, that was mine. So before we get started, Isaac, would you just summarize Patriot by Alexei Navalny for us in 15 seconds?
This book, Patriot, is a memoir by Alexei Navalny. He was the political opposition leader in Russia. And it kind of starts with his attempted assassination by poisoning in 2020. And he survives that, recovers, goes back to Russia, and then immediately is put in jail. So this is kind of his writings and musings while in jail. And then you also get a little bit of Russian history and his own background, just from his own point of view at the beginning of the book as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I off the bat, was excited to talk to you, Greg. Phil made a wild comment, which he does from time to time. He said that you were not an Alexei Navalny fan.
That's not a wild comment.
Well, you said he hated him, so that
Yeah.
was the wild comment.
That was the word that I used.
Okay, great. Let us talk about that.
Okay.
I think we have. I don't think that like I would have an opinion. I don't have any knowledge of Russian opposition, really of Putin in general. So it's great that you have an opinion, which means you have background. Obviously, you do. I would love to hear your take on that. Why do you not like this person?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of joking when I say that I hate
Okay.
him. Like, he's a person that I very much respect for a lot of reasons, mainly being a literal prison martyr for his beliefs.
Yeah.
Kind of hard to hate that guy. But before that, it was a little easier. He's the fact that I don't know. So the fact that you guys are under the impression that he's like the opposition leader, and the fact that he presents himself as such in the book, is kind of like the point of divergence. He's not a very well-known figure in Russia.
Okay. I was going to ask you, Greg, if that was an accurate characterization of him as a person, the opposition leader. And you're saying potentially he was painting himself in a bigger light or in a bigger, picture than really was true.
Well, so it's sort of complicated. And I will say that the book forced me to do kind of a much deeper dive to contextualize his level of fame than I ever had before. And I think it might be helpful just to kind of go through like a last 10 years of the Russian opposition overview to kind of see where he fits. Prior to 2015, as you'll remember from the book, he's mostly just like, you could maybe call him an investigative journalist or an activist. He's not really like a political figure.
Right.
Gains the biggest part of his fame through these corruption exposés.
Have you seen the videos he would make?
Yeah, I've seen some.
Yeah.
And even before he did the videos, like more of his articles, I would say I encountered those out in the wild of Russia more than I did like the videos. The thing, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but the thing about his sort of online persona is that it's almost totally Western facing. The vast majority of his viewers are immigrants. That like even if it's Russian language content, it's Brighton Beach, it's Warsaw.
Oh, interesting.
It's those people it's Belarus to a great extent, it's Ukraine to a great extent. His sort of base that's watching these videos is a relatively small and almost totally powerless group of millennials and Gen Z, like extremely online Muscovites for the most part within Russia, almost all of which left at the beginning of the war in Ukraine.
Okay.
So there's not a whole lot left of that movement to whatever extent that there was in Russia. But to back up, one of his anti-corruption exposés was course material at the Russian university that I went to. That was pretty well regarded, I would say, among the establishment. I wouldn't say that my professor was a liberal. He was fairly well connected with the Putinist government. It seemed like actually they recognized it for what it was. It was like, this is a pretty good anti-corruption sort of body of research that you're doing.
Right.
And not all of the corruption is sanctioned directly by the powers that be. It's a very complicated ecosystem.
So is the Russian corruption like if Putin brings corruption against an official, is that like they're screwed then? So like the corruption that is out in the light, is that fairly harshly dealt with or no? For example, what I'm thinking of is in China, corruption is extremely, if you get counts of corruption, like you're away forever. But obviously everyone is corrupt. It's just whether or not Xi Jinping wants to come out and say, okay, you're corrupt. And then once he says you're corrupt, you're screwed. So like, is that sort of how it's in Russia as well?
Absolutely. I think it's sort of how corruption functions just period across the world, where
True.
where corruption thrives, you have to make sure that you're being corrupt in the way that anyone that has leverage over violence, more or less, is okay with it. And when you fall out of favor.
Because like one of his
corrupt.
charges once he was in jail for like 2 years already was that he was taking money from one of his funds. So like he was being charged with corruption.
Right.
Yes. And I mean, part of that's sort of a character assassination attempt. Like,
Mhm.
oh, you think we're corrupt? Well,
You're corrupt.
who's to say you're not the corrupt one?
Yeah.
No one.
I know
No
you
one
are, but
cares
what
enough
am
to prove
I?
otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Greg, you were kind of outlining, though, the other political opposition. I was excited to hear a bit
Yeah.
about that. Yeah.
So around 2015, in the aftermath of kind of like the quasi transition of power under Medvedev, and then of course the invasion of Crimea and Donbass, Putin is sort of at his weakest, you could say, or maybe the opposition is at its strongest. That's where you have key figures like Mikhail Khodorkovsky and Boris Nemtsov. They join the opposition, quote unquote. These are two extremely influential billionaires, and this is actually probably the closest a liberal opposition. Liberals may be a strong word for that bloc, but the opposition as such is actually probably at this point could be considered an existential threat to the regime. And at that point, as you see in the novel, that's when people just start getting gunned down in the streets. Putin doesn't even allow them to get to their first rally,
Right.
essentially.
Right.
There's no tiptoeing around with poisoning or charges or anything like that. Navalny gets an acid attack, but at this point, he's not considered like enough of a threat to get an assassination attempt. It seems like he's at this point an anti-corruption activist. He's a blogger, sort of a meme candidate, but this is not.
Is this when
This
he
is again.
runs
This is
for
among
when he runs for governor of
governor of
Moscow?
Moscow. Yeah, but again, outside of Moscow, zero name recognition.
Okay.
He's just sort of an internet personality at this point, not a household name. And then, yeah, Nemtsov gets shot down in the streets. This coalition sort of fractures. There's no money behind it. It sort of languishes for a while. Navalny kind of goes out on his own. Also, there's this other character named Yavlinsky who is there from the very beginning. He's this like Bill Clinton era liberal, very sort of academic, sniffly. Can't stand Navalny for a lot of the same reasons that I can't. But he's also has never had even Navalny level real broad appeal. He's just sort of like an academics only candidate. But yeah, Yavlinsky and Navalny are constantly saying like sniffly things about each other during the whole time, even though they're ostensibly on the same side. And then
And he does sort of
Navalny
give
sort of
that
hits
throughout the book where he's like,
as well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like I used to love this guy,
Yeah.
and then I'm like, this guy sucks.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, and so Yavlinsky, for his part, publishes a lot of withering critiques of Navalny as like he sort of outwardly makes fun of Navalny for presenting himself as an existential threat to the Putin regime, and Yavlinsky's just like, you're not. They don't care about you. They don't watch your videos. No one does.
They never think about you
during this period. Yeah, no, literally, which is kind of, and I think that's probably overselling it. Like, obviously, he cared enough to go, but not much more than that. It seems like.
Yeah.
That is until maybe this nexus of 2020. 2020 is another watershed year as Putin begins to set conditions for invading Ukraine. And also, this is what I do my thesis on, which is the 2020 summer Belarusian protests, which is the closest thing any other East Slav state got to like Euromaidan in Ukraine. It really did seem touch and go whether or not they would succeed in overthrowing Lukashenko at the time. And Putin's regime acted very dramatically to shore up the Lukashenko regime. And it is at this time, it seems like roughly probably when the order was given to at least set conditions for the assassination of Navalny. Navalny is at the same time doing this smart voting system with the stated goal of, and he says this in the text, like to break Putin's monopoly on power. And so rather than just criticizing corruption, he's always been like a very vocal critic of Putin, but he specifically says, I want to change this regime at all costs. At the same time, there's a ton of collaboration between Navalny's people and the people that are actively trying to overthrow Lukashenko. And it looks pretty bad because they're all operating out of Warsaw, which is also like the Polish state is considered in many ways like an existential threat, at least maybe not existential, but like a huge threat to the border sovereignty of Russia and its ally Belarus.
Right.
At least by the sort of paranoid Kremlin mindset. So I think that is when it kind of gets pushed over the threshold of it's this guy actually, we're kind of panicking. It's time to take this guy out. But we're going to do it in the way that we reserve for like the lowest of the traitors, which is Novichok Bozining. We're not going to give him the dignity and the press of like just shooting him in the back while he's crossing a bridge in Moscow in front of everyone.
Right.
And then he gets evacuated, goes up even more to the west, becomes even more of a darling of the West, makes the decision to go back, and they finish the job is more or less what happens. But at no point is he, even after that, considered enough of a threat to like confiscate his phone. Like he's still posting all the time. And I think one of the reasons is he's sort of worse for the opposition than nobody at all in many ways, because he's very much performing what Putin wants him to be, which is just like slavish devotion to neoliberalism,
But like not actually
endorsement of
successful.
extremely unpopular opinions in Russia, and then just constantly heaping scorn on even the most respected parts of Russian society, most of which I think is, I don't know, maybe not incorrect, but certainly unwarranted and not diplomatic at all.
Yeah.
So the Putin government like kind of turned all his posts and stuff as being like, look, Russian people, he's posting all this to the Western world. Like he's not talking to you at all. Is that what that was their play?
And bringing it back to the actual book that we read together, like this is an English language trade book that has been wildly promoted in like queer-owned Brooklyn bookstores. The only people that are really still reading books.
Hey, and like, the first pagers.
Yeah, and us. Yeah. But that's the segment of Western society. This is this group of people that feels more at home at a coffee shop in Amsterdam than they feel like in a small town in Indiana somewhere. Like this is sort of like a globalistic elite of liberals, and like this whole book is just like, let me spoon feed your worldview back to you,
right,
and tell you how much better you are than the Russians. And there are a couple of good Russians, and they all believe the things that you believe and say the things that you want them to say. And the whole book, it just seems it doesn't seem like about Russia. It doesn't seem like it's about opposing Putin. It seems like it's about like Navalny being better than everyone else and more righteous. And you, the reader, by extension, because you like him and identify with him, like are better than everyone else and whoever the Putin boogeyman in your country is, by extension.
Yeah.
These are all things that Russians are extremely sensitive to, like this sort of barbarian sort of way that they perceive themselves as being treated by the West, and they latch onto that very, very much.
Mm-hmm. In a negative way, like in a way that's like, this is not speaking to me at all. Yeah.
Well,
well, I'm really glad you're on, because I had no idea about all that.
I also bought,
like I said in the thing, like,
I was like, I love this guy.
I did too, totally. I was like,
I thought he was like,
well,
he is like the head guy, like leading this charge against, like, that's so funny.
Yeah, it's quite scary, actually, the misinformation that can be from one, book that you can read. Sorry, Greg, what were you saying?
I wouldn't call it misinformation. Like I will say there's a lot of good about the book. I don't think he's ever really wrong about anything.
Okay.
He's never lies in the entire book.
Right.
In fact, I find myself agreeing with him constantly. But it's like sort of the same predicament where we have like, why does the Democratic Party in America keep losing? Like never really saying anything that's really wrong or immoral or anything in any of its campaign promises. Arguable, but like that's not the big thing. The big thing everyone is saying, everyone's sort of on the same page about this now, is like the way that they've been snootily looking down their noses and like performing, what's that, like virtue signaling, and like performing this like air of superiority. Like that speech that he does when he's first, I think, convicted, is like he goes on this long tirade against the people with they're looking down at their desks. Like,
instead of looking,
which is devastating, and he's not wrong necessarily. But also, that is all of Russia that he is just condemning. Like everyone eats from the same pig trough, like if you want to get anything done, if you want to protect your family, you've got to be complicit in the system. That's how corruption thrives. That's like why it's the way it is. None of those people have ever known anything otherwise. And the fact that he is willing to send his family members to prison
Yeah.
and die in prison and no one else is, I don't know. It doesn't come off as a serious political platform with a shot in hell of
So
winning.
I
It
think that
seems
that's
like
like
this is about virtue
I
signaling.
think that's
Yeah.
really interesting because I do think that like something that I walked away a lot from the book is just we talked a little bit about this in our last podcast of just okay, what useless acts in the moment are like
Mhm.
actually like worth it. I mean, there's good outcomes and then good decisions, right? So like you
Mhm.
can't really judge a
Yeah,
decision on the outcome because probabilistically it was a good decision when it happened. It's just it led to the wrong outcome. And so like you
Right.
would make that decision again given the chance. And like when does this performative action of dying, because I mean like going in he knew that that's what was going to happen, right? Like his
Right.
bet was that this will garner enough press or this book will be written and the West is going to talk about me and the New York Times is going to have a headline news when I die in prison, and that is going to be worth it even though this itself obviously will not do anything. And I think I'm going to push back a little bit, Greg, because I do think that like there were certain things, especially in the civil rights movement, that like, I mean, how much did actual sit-ins day of do? Nothing. They did nothing. Nothing. The day after
right.
in Nashville, Tennessee, when they all sat on Fifth Ave, nothing was different. But that legacy and that like stirring the pot did have long-term action. And even when Martin Luther King got arrested and just sat in jail, he wasn't doing anything in jail. But when he got out, he could talk about that experience. He could serve as like a temporary martyr. And the other aspect of it, though, is yeah, I mean, you think about someone like Bernie Sanders, where you're like, Bernie, if you were just a little bit willing to make a deal here, a little bit more compromising, who's to say you couldn't have beat Hillary? Who's to say then you couldn't have beaten Trump and you would have actually had power rather than just always
Yeah.
being this sheer opposition person that's easy to talk about? So you're like,
Mhm.
maybe sometimes compromise is good, but like ex ante, it's impossible to say when those decisions can be made. In my opinion, I can't really say that this guy's decision to go to jail is useless because I mean, it didn't do anything in the moment, but who knows? I think we're talking about it. I don't know any of the other current Russian opposition leaders that might be a bigger name in Russia. And obviously, this is a very Western take, but like
No,
the
that's true.
pressure for Putin, and I don't know too much about the situation, but it seems like the West actually does have the only thing that might be able to pressure him, which is like existential, like economic ability to sanction that state.
Yeah, I want to affirm first of all, like there it does seem like the act of his death in prison seems to have spurned a new round of sanctions, none of which seem to have achieved their aims, but that's some real world thing.
Mhm.
Um, Russia has moved so far towards autarky at this point, though, like sanctions no longer
Yeah.
have the ability
Have an
Yeah.
impact.
to do anything, which is sort of an intentional policy by the Russian state. I want to back up though. Like you seem to have invoked letters from Birmingham prison, which has been on my mind a lot while reading this. Is like what is different
Yeah.
about this book? What makes this? Why is this book piss me off more than any other book I've ever read?
Mm.
Whereas like I revere Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham prison.
Mhm.
I think it is the implicit threat and violence that underpins the letter from Birmingham prison. I think it's because he is very thinly threatening to call for massive violence against whites and against like the regime. I think that like I think it's the Black Panthers that are active, that are sort of like the other side of this movement the whole time. James Baldwin, like his book is called The Fire Next Time,
Yeah.
like very on the nose sort of references to like
rising up
you
in
know,
riots and being violent.
stage one. Yeah. Stage one is to demonstrate that you have no legitimacy to rule. The second is for us to demonstrate that you have no authority to rule. And the way we're going to do that is by breaking your monopoly on violence. At no point does Navalny seem, because he would give up the moral high ground that this is all clearly about, does he seem willing, capable, whatever, of invoking a threat of violence. And I think that that's why Nemtsov got gunned down, is because oligarchs have private armies in Russia to a small extent, not nearly enough to overthrow the state, but that's some kind of pressure. And that's why Prigozhin was shot down out of the sky, because that really was kind of the strongest threat to Putin's regime, which is literally just get 1,000 dudes with guns and drive to Moscow and kill everyone in our way.
Which happened in
That worked pretty well.
1917, sort
Could have
of,
worked.
right? I mean,
Yeah. So these, I think there's a great text at Princeton. It was about like opposition movements. They have their like culturally dependent things that you're allowed to do, ways in which this kind of works, and like they pretty much everything sort of follows a template in each tradition. Sit-ins, protests, petitions, like these sort of have a way of putting pressure in Western societies because there's sort of like this understood language of what they mean if they're not heeded. I don't think Russia really has that. It's a history of autocracy, and templates of regime change are the Pugachev rebellion, which is a really close analog to what Prigozhin did. Yeah, there is like crumbling central state and secret society vanguard sort of that happened with the Soviet Union.
Mhm.
There is a rise up of corrupt business industries under a weak state, which is sort of how which is a very cynical way of talking about the fall of the Soviet Union and like the Yeltsin movement.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's foreign pressure. There's essentially just outward invasion.
Yeah.
Mongols, French, Germans. Mongols are the one that achieved it. But yeah, nobody really knows what it means if you protest. You're just like, what are you
you're doing this here
doing here, guys?
performatively. Interesting.
Yeah, and that's what Yavlinsky is like. He's just like, stop protesting, guys. Like, what? You're just getting arrested. You're just making us all look bad. Like,
This isn't working.
Yeah, and clearly Yavlinsky is even less effective than Navalny.
Yeah.
But at least it's probably a much more qualified voice to comment on it than me by any means.
So if I could summarize, Greg, because I thought it was interesting, you're saying like the difference that you see in this book versus like what MLK was doing is there's no backing to this. Like there's no way forward from what he's doing essentially. Whereas like MLK was like, there is a alternative that would happen here. And we have the threat of that and it's real. And it could be very effective. So which do you want, essentially? He had the upper hand and the power there, where Navalny had really nothing other than his TikToks and stuff to kind of combat what was going on.
Yeah, and the framework I'm using here is not an original thought. I'm explicitly using the Kissinger's understanding of power politics, incidentally beloved by Putin and his regime there, and like just the Russian foreign policy apparatus in general. They taught Kissinger in his outlook on politics.
Mm-hmm.
Kissinger constantly, till the day that he died, was giving speeches in Moscow. They love him there. But Kissinger's the closest thing we have to like a Russian geopolitical brain, I would say. Like they're very much on the same page. But he says there are two things that you need to rule, really, and that one is legitimacy,
mm-hmm.
and one is like authority.
Yeah,
like authority is hard power, and legitimacy is the moral power. And if you lose one,
you don't have it.
You can argue that one is more important in certain societies than others, but you do need both. And that's Martin Luther King seems to have overtly or intuitively understood this,
mm-hmm.
and threatens both. Like, we have destroyed your moral legitimacy.
Right.
Now we're going to threaten the other thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's how we get some sort of incremental change, at least.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I think you summarized it really amazingly, and I'm so happy that you are here to talk with us, because I think we would be bumbling around this a little bit. I had one other thought I wanted to talk about. You had mentioned this a little bit, of this idea of, and he says it in the book, of state versus country. So he can hate the state, love the country, essentially. And that, I think, more than anything, because I didn't have the background that you've just provided us, stuck out to me, because it was this idea for me of like, why would you go back to Russia when you know, Phil, as Phil said, you know this is going to happen. And whether it was effective or not, he claims this love of country that was propelling him, I think, in many ways. And I found that to just be, I don't really have anything other than that. I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention because I thought it was an interesting commentary. And I think it could speak to a lot of people in the United States over the last 10 years as well. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. And I'd love to hear, Isaac or Phil, any of the other thoughts that you did have, or maybe something that Greg said that sparked something for you.
Now I'm reevaluating I definitely he got me, like Phil said. I read this as the liberal Westerner, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Like, that was obviously the goal of the book, and now I'm slightly more educated on like kind of what is going on there. I think regardless of how it is attacked, there is some bad corruption going on and some oppression by a regime that is just hoarding power and wealth and influence for itself, and letting the people that it's supposed to be taking care of, suffer. And I know a little bit more about that now, so that's cool. But I think the country versus state, it's sort of like going home. Like, I don't love living near Pennsylvania, but it'll always be home,
Right. It's familiar. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think just to say, I really actually also liked the first half of the book. I think that he probably does grandstand a little bit in the first half, but I also think that until maybe the midpoint of the book, he does present, well, at the very beginning, but then he backtracks. He does present himself sort of just as a journalist. Like, I was trying to do things. I was trying to stir the pot. I think his tales about college and sort of society there give me a glimpse into Russian society that I think is very real. And for me, and maybe again, that's a misnomer, but just even the sheer level of sort of corruption and payoffs in the academic system, that he, as somebody who hated that, was I
Still
ended
part
up
of.
doing it. Yeah. I did not do things that I am proud of. And
even to get a car across the border, I found that to be
it was very interesting. I think that maybe it's because I don't know Russian society, but I do just abhor memoirs, and I thought that was pretty well written in a narrative style as well.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I want to, if I can say, I kind of want to distance myself from my original, I hate Alexei Navalny, just because that's sort of, I'm trying to backtrack a little bit from that. That original part was a really good, it was honestly a $250,000 Princeton education on Russian society in a few chapters, where he happened to have lived a life that touched on every major topic of contemporary Russian history. And he's an amazing writer. He's an amazing writer, incredibly moral person, very courageous person that I admire very deeply for that reason. And it also pisses me off a lot, but
I think you painted your picture well.
It's really
Greg.
good.
I think you.
It's a really good history.
Yeah,
it's an amazing history. I will say, and a very interesting one to read is what I wanted to get that off my chest before I come down. It's too anti. God forbid, pro Putin.
Yeah, just comes across, invite.
Yeah.
I will say
Putinist on podcast.
I will say, I was telling my dad that you were not a fan of him, or our dad, obviously, and he was like, "So he's pro Putin," and I was like, "I don't know, honestly."
This is where we might be leaning in on your
The
editing
editing.
abilities to reduce that
No, I
impression.
think you made an excellent point about the comparison between. I think that really would draw it home for a lot of our listeners as a Western mindset of the MLK versus him. I think you made a lot of sense, and I can understand, especially because you have so much background and you've done so much research on this in this part of the world, that it would frustrate you. I think it makes sense. It doesn't come off like you don't respect him and saw value in it. So, and I really appreciate your candidness, and I think we all do. Did you have anything else, Greg, you wanted to say? I think I'd love to go into what you thought of the book overall.
No, I think I went over essentially most of my impressions. Like, it's just the thing that I really disliked about it was just how pandering that it was to its audience. And it's just, especially me, like I'm like the guy that would be reading this book, like especially, and it's just like, I felt so pandered to it. He wouldn't shut up about Rick and Morty the entire time.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And like,
Trying to be relatable.
and Billie Eilish and Harry Potter,
Yeah.
like it just came off very cynical and pandering to me.
So funny.
That's what I hate about it. What I love about the book, though, is it is really exceptional history. It is extremely well written. This is a man that's an amazing orator. It's extremely candid. I don't think it's dishonest at all. I want to be very clear about that. Like, I don't think it's dishonest. I think he believes every word that he says.
Right.
I don't think he's wrong about anything, really. And it's very informative, really cool look into contemporary Russian politics. It got better as I read it more.
So overall rating, Greg, what would you say if you had to give it a number, 1 through 5?
3 out of 5.
3. Okay. Phil, what about you?
I'm going to rock the boat a little bit. I still loved it. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5.
Oh my gosh, Phil. Wait, that's so exciting, Phil.
I really
I'm
just
happy you enjoyed it.
This was one of the books where like I caught myself doing things that I don't usually do listening to books. Usually I'm pretty good about like putting away my audiobook when I start to work or like when I start to cook and like want to switch to TV or something. I was like throughout the entire night just silently listening to this book, especially the time like pre-prison. I think the Prison Diary got a little bit worse for me, but I was very I have an aversion, unfortunately, to current geopolitical turmoil. Reading about it and learning about it, it's a horrible thing. But I just think that a lot of people come in very strong and don't know what they're talking about. And it's hard for me to be like, okay, I have this stance. And so that's sort of how I feel about Russia and Crimea. It's not a super helpful view, but this was the first time that I felt like, okay, I actually am very interested in engaging with this like geopolitical turmoil in the moment, and this book spurred that for me. So I think
memoir, Phil.
Yes, I don't think the memoirs are for me, but I'm going to go with a 5. Despite, and I think Greg's points are really, really, really valid, but just coming off my sheer reaction to the book when I read it, I was very excited about it.
Yeah. Isaac, what about you?
So I gave it a 3 too. Greg, you're an awesome guest to have on this because I feel like I had a 3 before we even talked to you, but you just more eloquently put into like what I was kind of feeling and then also justified my feelings a little bit, but in a way more educated way than I would just be like, it seemed like he was kind of just like not serious in prison. Yeah. That was my kind of problem with it. I really enjoyed his history of the fall of the Soviet Union was my favorite part of the book.
Yeah.
Really good. Really good.
Once he got to jail though, I was the opposite of you, Phil. I was like, I'm listening to this at 3.0 speed. I need this to be over.
So I will say like, the prison dragged out. I was more talking about the first half of the book. I was like, I can't stop listening to this book. The prison, you're right. Like, I mean, just everything was just like a little bit off where you're just like, why do you have a social media presence in prison if you are
I never
so
understood that. I thought maybe he was writing letters of
I
what
thought that
someone should
too.
post on his Instagram, but that didn't even bug me that much. I was more like, Greg, you just very well said. I think we're doing this Navalny a lot of credit comparing him to Martin Luther King too, but I just like thought that like you are, if you're trying to create this opposition thing, and again I was reading this as like he is the guy, the opposition guy.
Same.
It's like it seems like you should maybe not be joking around so much in your solitary confinement, like
Yeah.
so that just it just drug on for me.
Yeah, agreed. I was a 3 as well for the same reason. The idea of being in solitary confinement was it was stressful for me to read about. And again, I
Yeah.
do have a lot of, I think for him to keep it light was actually, I mean, the other thing would have been like doom and gloom. So either way, it would have been very challenging to read. And obviously to experience, even obviously more so. But 3 for me, I was really looking forward to learning about the Russian geopolitical climate, and I got a little bit of it, but I would have liked the whole book probably to be about that. So it was a 3 for me as well.
But a 5-star convo, 5-star guest.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah. I honestly think this would have been a huge echo chamber had you not been on, Greg. I'm so thankful Phil threw your name out. You were very prepared and very educated on the topic, and I feel much more educated now having talked to you. My recommendation for the book, I feel as if you might be like, this girl. I would say read Anna Karenina. I think it gives you a really good glimpse into Russian, completely different time period, but Russian life, and very different Russian life than what was happening in this book. So yeah, I think everyone should read Anna Karenina. It's my most favorite book I've ever read. It's by obviously Leo Tolstoy. Just a fabulous, fabulous book. Big undertaking, but would recommend. Greg, what would you recommend?
I would go with Generation P, also known as Homo Sapiens by Viktor Pelevin. If you want like a better understanding of the immediate post-Soviet catastrophes and like why Russian society is deeply skeptical of Navalny's liberal project and of liberalism in general. It is also quite the literary achievement in its own right. And it's like a psychedelic page turner. Hilarious. Pretty accessible.
Cool.
Big fan.
Thank you for that recommendation. Phil, what about you?
So mine actually would be the autobiography of Malcolm X by Malcolm X and Alex Haley. I think it's a very similar political figure as well. Malcolm X probably was more action, but also was not the leader of the resistance movement. But paints himself as the leader. So I do think that that's like a very interesting sort of analogy that we have in our current time. So that's what I would recommend.
Thank you. Isaac, what about you?
I recommend The Story of Russia by Orlando Figg. It's one of those books that covers like a huge period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very top level. I read it earlier this year just because I was trying to learn a little bit more about history. So it was good. But I think I've said this on the podcast before. I was not as much anymore on a huge Mongol kick. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole section about the Mongols' takeover of Russia and how the whole Crimea area was a Mongol. God, I can't think of the word now. But like, sorry, what'd you say?
The Khaganate or something like that?
Yeah, a Khaganate. Yeah. For like, so long. Like a really, really long time.
Yeah.
Like well past Genghis Khan. And it was close to modern Europe, and this still was a Khaganate. So that was the coolest part of the book. But
interesting. Thank you. Yeah, good recommendations. I think wide ranging there. Before we go, we always like to talk about what we're reading next time. And we will be talking to one of Isaac's friends who recommended, this is our fan pick, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So quite different than Patriot.
Which I believe was the last book that Kevin has read.
Yes. He's read it several more times in preparation for this podcast.
He's also prepared. We love a prepared guest. So Isaac, would you just tell us and the listeners about what that book is about?
Yeah, so The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, it's by C.S. Lewis. It's the story of 4 siblings who discover a magical land called Narnia. And when they get there, the entire land is under this spell by a witch who has kind of taken over. So it's always winter. And they join forces with Aslan, who is kind of the creator of the world. It's a big lion to free the land from winter and destroy the witch.
Yeah. This has been a hot minute since I have read this book. So excited to talk with everybody next time. Before we go, I just want to say, Greg, thank you again so much for taking the time to read the book and talk with us and educate us and our listeners. It was invaluable to have you on. And so, yeah, thank you again.
Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate the invite. I also appreciate like the forcing function of before I make any wild claims, like I had to do a lot of research to make sure I knew what I was talking about, because I think like Isaac, like I was just very angry about a few things and I couldn't put my finger. I don't know. Like I kind of knew why, but I didn't know the details of why. And I just had to, now I'm a lot more, I don't know.
Justified in your righteous anger.
I don't want to give, yeah, I don't want to give the
out.
impression that I just knew all this stuff like off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Like, this is a lot of Wikipedia.
Well, it was great preparation then. Thank you so much. And we always close out with reminding people to call someone that you love, especially, reading this book. He even says it in there. Call someone that you love, tell them that you love them, tell them about a good book that you have recently read. And then until we talk again, stay classy, second pagers. We'll see you later.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you guys very much.
Let's go beyond